All right, now let's go on and lean into this thing the right way. The question is, why does Islam allow polygamy? And I already know some of y'all heard that and your eyebrows went up so fast they almost left your forehead. Because in today's culture, especially in the West, we've been raised on one blueprint, one man, one woman. That's it. Anything outside of that, folks label it backwards, unfair, oppressive, before they even take 5 minutes to understand it. And that's the problem right there. We react before we research. We judge before we listen. See, when I first looked into this, I had to separate emotion from information. Because the word polygamy carries baggage. People imagine a man building a collection of wives like he collecting trophies. They imagine chaos, jealousy, dysfunction. But Islam doesn't present it like some kind of reward system for men. It presents it as a conditional permission. And that word conditional is doing a whole lot of work. It is not a command. It is not a requirement. It is not a goalpost for spiritual success. It is a permission tied to responsibility so heavy that most men would struggle carrying it. Now let's talk about the condition that changes everything. Justice. A man is required to treat each wife equally, financially, emotionally, physically, and time spent in living standards equally. And if he fears he cannot be just, then he is instructed to marry only one. That's not my opinion. That's built into the rule itself. So this idea that Islam is just handing out blank checks to men, that ain't accurate. It's actually putting them under stricter accountability. Because now your private behavior becomes public responsibility. You don't get to hide. You don't get to play favorites. You don't get to disappear emotionally. Everything has to be balanced. And here's something else people don't factor in: historical context. When these laws were revealed, societies were dealing with war, famine, instability. Large numbers of men had died. Women and children were left without providers. There was no welfare system, no insurance policies. Marriage wasn't just about romance. It was about survival and protection. So under strict guidelines, allowing a financially capable and just man to marry more than one wife provided structure instead of leaving families vulnerable. That don't mean it's simple. That don't mean it's easy. But it does mean there was a social framework behind it. Now, I'm not telling you that you have to agree with it. I'm telling you that if you're going to question it from a place of understanding. Because we live in societies right now where people have multiple secret relationships with zero accountability. And somehow that's less shocking because it's hidden. At least here, if it happens, it's structured, it's public, it's legally binding, it's financially enforced. That changes the conversation. And we just getting started. Now let's go deeper, because this is where people usually get uncomfortable. The emotional side. See, rules on paper sound one way, but real life got feelings. Real life got jealousy. Real life got insecurity. So when folks hear that Islam allows up to 4 wives, they automatically assume women must just be sitting somewhere quietly accepting whatever comes their way. And that assumption right there, that's built off not knowing. Because marriage in Islam is a contract. A contract. And contracts come with conditions. A woman can stipulate in her marriage agreement that her husband cannot take another wife. Yes, that's real. She can make monogamy a condition of the marriage. And if he violates it, she has grounds to walk away. That shifts the power dynamic people think exists. See, the way it's framed in headlines makes it seem one-sided. But the structure itself includes consent, legal responsibility, and financial obligation. You don't get to sneak around. You don't get to hide a second family. You don't get to emotionally ghost one household to entertain another. Everything is above board. Everything is accountable. And let me tell you something, most men who romanticize the idea of multiple wives ain't thinking about the math. Because this ain't just about emotions, this is about provision. You are financially responsible for every wife, equally. Housing, clothing, food, security, stability. That's not optional. That's mandatory. And here's another part people overlook. Just because something is allowed doesn't mean it's common. In many Muslim-majority societies today, the overwhelming majority of marriages are monogamous. Why? Because equality at that level is hard. It's not just about splitting time evenly like you dividing up pizza slices. Human beings are not time slots. Emotions are not spreadsheets. So the spiritual warning is heavy. If you cannot be just, then one is better for you. That's the emphasis. Not how many can I have, but can I handle the weight of fairness? Now I know some folks still saying, well, I just don't like it. And that's fine. You don't have to like every religious ruling outside your tradition. But here's where we need to be honest. In Western societies, monogamy is the ideal. But infidelity rates tell a different story. People break vows privately all the time. There are secret affairs, hidden children, emotional betrayals that never see daylight. No legal responsibility to the second woman, no financial security for her, no public acknowledgement, just secrecy and damage. So the real contrast isn't one wife versus 4 wives. The real contrast is regulated transparency versus unregulated secrecy. And I'm not saying polygamy is easy. I'm not saying it's for everybody. What I am saying is that when you examine it inside its own moral framework, it's about responsibility, not indulgence. It's about structure, not chaos. It's about accountability, not freedom without limits. And when you shift your lens from cultural shock to contextual understanding, you start seeing this ain't some wild free-for-all. It's actually a system with more restrictions than most people realize. And trust me, we're still not done unpacking this. Now let's get to the part that makes most people scratch their heads and raise their eyebrows, the social and spiritual reasoning behind it. Because polygamy in Islam isn't just some random rule somebody made up to give men a perk. No, sir. It comes with a purpose that ties directly to responsibility, protection, and morality. When you really look at it, this permission exists in a framework that puts the vulnerable first. Women, orphans, widows, children. See, Islam didn't emerge in a vacuum. It came into societies recovering from war, famine, and injustice. And in those situations, there were families that would have been left helpless if the law didn't allow a capable man to marry multiple wives under strict conditions. It wasn't about luxury, it was about survival. Structured, legal, accountable survival. And here's where most people miss it. Polygamy isn't about personal desire. It's about fairness and accountability. The Quran explicitly warns, if a man fears he cannot be just, then he is instructed to marry only one. That right there flips the whole narrative. You see, in many modern societies, men cheat. They hide second families. They neglect responsibilities. They break hearts. No contracts, no legal oversight, no accountability. But under Islamic law, every marriage is a contract. Every marriage is transparent. Every marriage comes with obligations that cannot be ignored. That's a whole different system. It's not perfect. Human beings are human. But the structure is designed to reduce harm. And let's talk morality for a minute. Polygamy in Islam isn't treated lightly. Justice isn't optional. Emotional responsibility isn't optional. Financial responsibility isn't optional. And here's the kicker. If you can't uphold these responsibilities, the law says you're limited to one. That's heavy. That's not about preference. That's accountability, and it's rare for people to see it that way. They think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But Islam flips that. Freedom comes with discipline. Accountability isn't a burden. It's a moral compass. And here's something else I notice. People automatically assume women are the passive participants in this system. But in reality, consent is central. Women can accept it, negotiate it, or reject it entirely. It's not automatic. It's not coercion. And while jealousy and emotions are real because humans are humans, the system's intention is to regulate behavior in a way that promotes fairness rather than chaos. That's a point that's completely lost when people react only to the word polygamy and not the structure behind it. This is why the conversation has to go beyond shock value, beyond headlines, beyond memes. Polygamy in Islam is about structure, responsibility, protection, and social justice, not indulgence. And if we ever want to have an honest discussion about it, we have to start there, not with assumptions or outrage. All right, now let's wrap this up and get to the part that really matters, the takeaway. Because here's the truth nobody likes to say out loud. Polygamy in Islam isn't about making life easier for men. It ain't about giving him a free pass or a cheat code in love. No, sir. It's about accountability, responsibility, and social balance. If you step back and remove the cultural shock, the gossip, the judgment, and really look at it, you see a system that emphasizes fairness, protection, and moral duty. That's the whole point. The permission exists for very specific reasons, under strict conditions, and with clear limits. And that's something most people completely miss when they just hear the headline, Islam allows polygamy, and run with their assumptions. See, this ain't just theoretical. Polygamy comes with rules that are meant to safeguard everyone involved, not just the husband. Financial support must be equal. Emotional care must be equal. Time spent must be balanced. And if a man fears he cannot maintain fairness, he's instructed to limit himself to one wife. And that's the kicker. Fairness is non-negotiable. That flips the script or so many assumptions people have about Islam. They think it's all indulgence and freedom without responsibility. But the law puts the heaviest weight on accountability, and that's where most of us trip up, and the social dimension matters too. Remember, historically, polygamy addressed real-world problems. Widows and orphans left vulnerable, communities disrupted by war hardship. This wasn't about giving men a romantic advantage. It was about creating stability, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. That perspective changes the conversation entirely. When people complain about polygamy today, without understanding this, they miss the point. Islam regulates behavior to reduce harm and protect the vulnerable, not to satisfy desires. That's a moral principle that applies in any era, not just in the past. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? Polygamy in Islam isn't a loophole. It isn't a free-for-all. It's permission wrapped in rules, accountability, and justice. It's conditional, controlled, and never meant to be entered lightly. And for all those people who think it's unfair, maybe the lesson isn't about men having multiple wives. Maybe the lesson is about how human beings respond when given power and responsibility. Because that's the conversation we should be having. And once you understand the structure, the history, and the more reasoning behind it, the whole topic stops being shocking and starts being a lesson in fairness, discipline, and social ethics. That's the reality. That's the framework. That's why Islam allows polygamy, and why people still misunderstand it.